meeting to order. Let's maybe just do a quick round table and I'll take attendance. If you could unmute yourselves. I'll go first. I'm Chris Ganem. I'm the manager of utility services.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex Sibukowski, the water operations manager.
Hello, I'm Oli Wolf, General Manager of Environmental Services.
Very good value and community members.
And then let's go online. Director Graham.
Good morning. I'm Cheryl Graham. I'm your area director, and I would have liked to be there in person, but I'm suffering from a cold, so I thought I'd keep my germs to myself and come by Zoom today.
Got Robin Cook.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm the one of the two strata presidents for Grandview Properties, and regrets I could not be in this morning, but the wife has the car.
Okay, thanks, Robin. We've got Rob as well online. Rob, you're muted right now. We'll get back to Rob. Well, thank you, everybody, for making time out of your day-to-day to attend and for participating in the CAC. Just review the agenda. The first item on the agenda is just a review of the capital plan. We do a capital item budgeted in your budgets for 2025. I'll probably hand that over to Alex to just review that item.
Sure, did you want to go through the entire agenda or?
Oh,
yeah.
Sure, we'll start out again with the review of the capital plan. Operations and maintenance update, just a review of what's been done over the past year on the system. There was a question posed online about an emergency power supply, so that's something that staff can address in this meeting. Review of the 2024 to 2028, so the previously approved, board-approved financial plan, and then a presentation of the draft financial plan 2025 to 2029 in front of you, followed by we can have an open discussion with any other items that people would like to table, and then adjourn and follow up with you, of course, with any action items.
Good morning. Yeah, I'll probably take the three first items there, review the capital plan, review the operational maintenance, and then just touch on any question, the question that came up with regard to backup generator supply. So if we look at, I'm just trying to think of the page number here, it doesn't really say, I think it's page 4 of the agenda, the 2024 to 2028 financial plan. If you follow with me down the line, there are the rates up top, revenue, operating.
Just a second. Come in.
Are you here for the Grandview meeting?
Yes.
Oh,
I thought this was a general RDCK board meeting.
no, don't worry about that. Come and sit wherever you like. There's a large copy of the 2029 financial plan.
I couldn't read it.
Well, yeah.
Where are we?
Jim and Christine.
Yeah, we should do general introduction.
Yeah.
We're gonna move.
Online, we just had a walk-in CAC member, Jim Swetico, has joined us. So let's just do a real quick roundtable with us. Alex, you maybe introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm Alex Sibukowski, water operations manager.
Met you last year.
You bet.
I'm Oli Wolf, General Manager of as well. And Chris Gainham, our utilities manager.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Jim.
Nice to meet you.
We were just going through the agenda. We're on item 1, which is the review of the capital plan, and Alex was just reviewing that with the group here.
Yes, so just again, referencing the 2024 to 2028 financial plan, page number 4 of the agenda package. And if you could scroll down to about 3/4 of the way down, there is a line item called capital expenses. that is the item that we will be addressing for this portion of the meeting. You'll see there, the first line is the Grandview communications upgrades for the upper reservoir. We have $40,000 allocated in 2025. What this is the current communications between the three systems, which is the well pump, the treatment plant, and the reservoirs. Components of that communication system are obsolete, and we need to now upgrade the communication system. 40,000 is a conservative estimate. We are not sure exactly what that's going to entail because the communications also tie into the controls portion of the water treatment plant, and we can upgrade a lot or we can upgrade a little. It just really kind of depends on what we decide on for a communications system. So that is the main capital project that we have planned for 2025. We do have another one that I'm going to review in operating expenses that is being funded from reserves. However, because it's under $10,000, we can't actually itemize it as a capital expense. So if there's any questions on the capital project listed there for 2025, I'm happy to answer them. Yes, Director Graham?
Thank you. It just seems a little unclear to me on exactly what we're doing for this communication systems. Can we get some more details, or like what are other systems doing? What does it mean getting all three of these talking together? Like I just need a little bit more information, I think.
Sure, yeah. So currently right now it's radio communications between the lake pumps, the water treatment plant, and the reservoir. Those communications have failed at times, and parts for those communications are now obsolete. To really kind of explain it is just that we need to be able to have the lake pump, the water treatment facility to speak to the lake pumps to turn on, and then we need the reservoirs to also communicate the levels at which they're at. And that communication system needs to be upgraded.
So basically, you're talking about three transceivers plus associated control equipment.
Correct.
At each of the three sites.
Yes, correct,
Okay.
yeah. Does that help explain?
I understand it.
Okay.
Okay, if you understand. Like I'm just trying to, is this like a compute, like an IT thing, or this is like all radio? Like we're moving, you were saying it's obsolete. So is radio obsolete, or is it still radio?
Yeah, it's the components of the radio communication. As we all know, Grandview out there does not have great cell service. So using cellular transmission is not really an option. It will be radio likely again. Again, we are just in the preliminary planning stages. Jay Colley, who's the water operations supervisor for Water West, has a better knowledge than I do on the components that are there and what is currently failing and what needs to be replaced. But you know, on a general level, that's the capital project.
Yeah, the current system would be what, a UHF system?
Honestly, that would be a question for Jay Colley, and I'm happy to follow up and get those answers for you.
Yeah, in our asset management plan, so we've got an asset management plan with an inventory of all the infrastructure in all the systems, including Grandview. So it's SCADA controller and alarms is listed. This stuff typically has a lifespan of
7 to 10 years.
Yeah, 7 to 10 years. It is now
Close to 50.
It's aged out. Yeah, it is significantly aged out. It is a few years over its intended lifespan. So,
No, I understand that too.
If there's no, Director Graham?
There's no further chance of getting replacement parts and stuff for a system that gets beyond 10 years.
Correct.
Electronic system.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Director Graham?
you're muted, Director Graham.
Sorry. How will this committee be notified of like this capital project? Like, will there be since it seems like it's a very sort of, we're not sure, we need some upgrades, we're still getting a plan together for that. Like, would this committee receive an update on the project?
Not normally. It's a project under the $75,000 where we normally communicate then over and above that dollar amount with the board. So this would normally be handled at staff level only. If you have a specific interest, what is it what you would like to see? The ultimately the scope of the work or the dollar amount when we have received quotes, or what component would you be interested in that you would like to see prior to proceeding?
I think I'd like the other committee members to weigh in on that if this is something that they're interested in knowing about as it goes along.
My point of view, it's just a straightforward replacement project for an existing UHF radio system caused by obsolescence, basically.
That would be my guess.
So other than a paragraph summary of what is exactly intended to be done, a $40,000 expenditure is about the right amount that you would do for a job of that nature.
Okay. I mean, there's no objections from you or Chris. We can, when we have the scope worked out and have a pricing, we can send you a brief email, all members, if that's suffices.
Yeah, I would just have a comment about, without getting too technical, that there is, like, as you said, there are scattered components, which are the control aspects of the transceivers. That complicates things a little bit, which is why the price is what it is. So it's not just a transceiver replacement.
And as Alex pointed out, I guess there's probably, is my guess, again, I'm not in that project, but I guess a review if there's SCADA components that at the same time make sense, because they have to do probably some reprogramming to replace if they are at a critical age. We obviously have to be ready with SCADA components not working until we lose totally communication, because that just costs more dollars than doing a preventative.
But I would just also say that I'd just introduce some caution to relying on IT solutions or internet-based solutions through cell systems because of the signal strength problems that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Dedicated point-to-point systems are far more secure. And if they are the same as you have on your other water systems, you've got the consistency of parts replacement and so forth. So that's something to bear in mind. Okay.
Absolutely. Again, this is just a preliminary budgeting for a project that we are planning. However, budgets do get approved later on. So, we're coming to the table with saying this is what needs to be done. We don't have the exact, parts that need to replace, et cetera, until the budgets are approved and we can move forward with the planning portion of it. So this is just the preliminary stage of it.
So the scope is not fully worked out. Should for any reason a higher dollar amount be required, that would require us to come to the board for a financial plan amendment. So there's a formal process that your director would be involved in, and we certainly at that point, if something like that would happen, can send out that.
Yeah, there is that possibility where, depending on the technical person that decides on the final configuration, and if you've got a range of solutions, as you said, and it could be twice that price if they go to the Cadillac version, or the replacement of the existing system would be about that amount. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the scope really will be determined by what we find out once we're there. And there's other controls that radio portion, impact at the water treatment facility. So
Yeah, that's
again,
a
we can
scale.
provide an update once we get the plan in place, but we could also, through the billing insert that comes as a hard mail copy to each individual community member in April sometime, we can provide those details there.
Just one question. I think would have 4 points instead of 3 because we have 2 reservoirs that we control levels on.
I'm looking at the SCADA list right now. I mean, there's a couple of dozen outputs and inputs in that system, even though it's, first glance, relatively simple. Yeah, all the high and low level alarms, all the status alarms, that booster pump alarm, and
From an alarming system perspective and SCADA system perspective, yeah. But I'm thinking just communication points, unless some of them are hardwired. But we have 2 reservoirs. We have the treatment plant and we have the pump station.
It's all line of sight.
It is.
Absolutely, yes. Strong radio signals, so I don't concern myself too much about communications part of it.
Yeah.
The SCADA part, there are transceivers available that have those kind of inputs and outputs. So I think that figure would be about right. Okay. But I don't know what the current valuations are in the commercial market.
And they change very frequently depending how busy outfits are. We see large fluctuations at times.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no other questions on the capital projects, I'll move into the operating expenses. And that is the same page. It's just the section above the capital expenses. The 2 items of note would be the under contracted services, which is about halfway, a little more than halfway down. It's contracted services is under account number 54030 under operating expenses. Can everyone find it there? And if we look at the
52030.
54030 contracted services.
Oh,
yeah.
Great.
So under the 2025 budget column, which is a little further to the right there, one item of note would be the intake inspection that is planned. That's a $6,000 cost. That costing does come from a cost estimate provided by a diving team. So that's a relatively accurate cost there. And what we're doing is we're having a look at the intake. There has been in previous years some concern with the intake screen that was ripped off at some point and replaced, but we do need to ensure that the intake is not compromised in any way, so we will be performing that intake inspection next year.
What's your plan for how often these diving inspections take place?
We're looking at between 5 and 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's in this case specific to that location. As you may recall, we have a sewer line in proximity that we are not too hot about. It's downstream, but originally when it was placed against the original design across our water line, where it should have been in a different location, even that it was under engineering supervision project. So we just want to make sure, both in regards to integrity of the screen that we have that was once severed through, we assumed through an anchor, and in regards to that sewer line.
What's the separation between the intake and the sewage?
It's supposed to be 10 feet.
No. The separation of the sewer out.
Oh, not the, sorry, the lines are, yeah.
it depends.
It depends.
Yeah. I mean, the limit, the distance that you're allowed depends on a number of factors. They usually do a dispersion study. on the intake. I don't know the actual
Right, what's the
distance
actual?
between them. I don't know the actual distance between them. Someone might be able to confirm and follow up with.
Sure, yeah, there's definitely
Let's
engineered
find out with
designs.
your diving team. How
Oh,
far-
yeah.
Well, the diving team would be looking at the intake, not the outflow.
I agree, it would be good if we haven't confirmed it previously,
Yeah.
that the actual location of the outfall is the distance that was originally designed for. The other piece is the integrity of the outfall pipe.
Yes,
Right? If you have a leaking pipe, it's relatively new, but I think it is a well spent $1,000 to go along the sewage line and confirm the outfall point and the integrity of the sewer pipe.
You only do this once every 8 years. That would be a very good idea.
Yeah, I agree.
and confirm the separation, because there is a required separation between the two pipes. So,
If
yes.
we'd like to know.
I can't believe there's sewage going in the lake. It's still approved.
The solution to pollution is dilution, so engineers say, so that there is several sewage outfalls along the,
I mean, there's treatment prior to, I don't know the facts of that,
Yeah.
but it's the subdivision with 3-4 properties just
Below.
along the
Yeah.
lake that
It's a
received
nice
permit for that, yeah.
Yeah, so you would have primary treatment, I assume, like, you know, that septic level, like one treatment where it settles, it's got some biological breakdown, but, yeah. Because of that.
But I have to point out too, your subdivision, sorry, your strata had originally an intent to do a lake discharge as well. Hasn't happened, and I don't think it will ever happen unless there's a problem fixed.
The sewage side.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's the reason why we have actually an easement or statutory right of way along the west side of your strata all the way to the lake, because there was an intent by the developer to go lake discharge and transfer the system to the regional district at some point.
hey, is there any other questions on that? If not, then I will move to next line item down, account number 55010, repairs and maintenance. Again, there is another, under the 2025 budget column, there is a $6,000 cost for mid-zone PRV header repair in PRV station. That's been identified by our water operations supervisor as a component that needs to be repaired. It is failing.
Acronym.
Or sorry, pressure reducing valve. So there's 3 different pressure zones in the Grandview development, and that is one of the stations that the header does need to be repaired.
So it served a 20-year lifetime already?
It's since the construction of the distribution system, yeah. And then 2 line items down, you'll see a 5,000, same column, just under that 6,000 that we were speaking to, is a $5,000 cost for a post water treatment plant meter. Currently there is a post reservoir, but no post water treatment plant meter. That will help us.
What does that do?
That would help us better calculate what is going out to the distribution system versus what is being consumed by individual properties, to help determine if there is a considerable leakage amount.
So this is just a volume meter, it's not the quality meter?
That's correct, yes.
And to add to this, many of you may know, what we have is PVC pipe, which is typically considered good, but you have glued joints, which is not considered standard and has caused already some problems in the system, and that's why we feel the tracking of output versus what's received at the house is a good idea in order to monitor if we have any excessive leakage.
Is there any questions on that or any other components of the operating expenses?
So these are draft budgetary maximums at this point. When you actually get it contracted to replace the meter or buy the meter or get your technician to install it, you get an actual value for it, an actual.
Correct, yeah, this
item here
is
instead.
based off of previous experience with installing these types of meters. It's done in-house. So, yeah.
Just one comment, Alex, I think you have 40,000, 6,000 and 6,000, but it looks like our withdrawal from reserves is 51 instead of 52,000, so we might want
Okay, I will
Look at
update
that.
that. I'll have another look at that. Okay, if there's no further questions on the operating expenses, Chris had mentioned through the agenda, item 2.3, the emergency backup power supply. There was some questions on, from the community on the feasibility of having backup power to the water system.
Yeah, Robin posed that question.
So
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this was just raised at my last strata meeting. Forgive me, I'm not very well, I'm not very familiarized with our plant, so I don't exactly know how it all works. But is it safe to assume that our fire hydrants are supplied by our water treatment plant?
They are supplied from the volumes in your reservoirs, both reservoirs, correct?
Okay, so, and we get under a critical water conservation if we have a blackout for an extended period of time. So if this blackout continues, our firefighting capability could also diminish, if I read this correctly, right?
In a perfect storm, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
If you had an extended period, your consumption currently, except for some, heat dome years in August, for irrigation and such, there's ample supply in the reservoirs for long periods of time without power, but you are correct. Yeah, in a perfect storm, if there was an extended power outage, that could occur.
Yeah, so what about our filtration and dosing? So that is also, I assume, shut down. We're in a power failure too. But we don't put out a boil water advisory. Is that something we should also be considered doing, or does that not seem to be necessary?
The system is supplied from treated water in both reservoirs on a power outage. So the water treatment plant is offline, but the water you're receiving is treated water.
So the water in the reservoirs has been treated. So it's treated water in the reservoirs. Okay,
Correct.
I thought it might have been treated as it's distributed out of the reservoirs. Okay, so what initially we would like to consider at our own expenses, just a simple pump station with a manual override and just a receptacle. We don't want a generator because we know that would be expenses and it would sit there and literally rot over the years. But we would like to have the ability, should we have an extended power failure due to forest fire, whatever worst case scenario you could dream of, that we could quickly purchase and or rent a generator and have the ability to plug it in and quickly transform over. We understand that the filtration and dosing system would not be, so we would have to go under a boil water advisory, but at least we could get water up to the reservoirs and resupply the reservoirs so that we have our firefighting capability. Because let's face it, forest fires are in the news right now. And if we have an extended forest fire to the North Shore and we lose our power, we could be without power for an extended period of time. And then if it is a forest fire and we're running our reservoirs to our fire hydrants, that also is a concern.
Right,
So
yeah.
can we, obviously we just need to table this, but we'd like it on the back burner. And I think the majority of the strata would be willing to have a an assessment and cover the costs outside of the operating budget of the RDCK.
So just to make sure we are all on the same page, so the suggestion is to have a switch at the pump station and a pre-configured cable that we then can plug in a rented generator and switch over to generator power at the pump station only.
That's right. That's all we'd like is just get even just basic filtered water up to the reservoirs from obviously the inlet filter, and then issue a boil water advisory at that point. But I think that's a concern that we should put on the board.
Wouldn't you need more than one? You've got the one at the source, but isn't there an intermediate pump station
Yeah, and
that
I
also
can-
needs power?
I can speak to that, or will we?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, there is some challenges, and I do absolutely agree and appreciate what you're getting at for sure to maintain a source of fire flow during those outages. The issue is that there are essentially three components that we need to consider. One being the lake pumps, which are 15 horsepower each.
Okay.
And that's a significant size generator. We're looking at, we just recently did one in one of our other water systems. It was a $70,000 cost for that.
Sorry, but he's not suggesting.
No, but yeah. And then those lake pumps push the water. They have the head pressure to push it through the water treatment facility, right? So it would push it through the water treatment facility, and then it pushes it up to the first reservoir, the most eastern side reservoir. Then there's the electrical components in the water treatment facility that fail closed in a power outage. So you would need to have some sort of additional UPS or power supply to maintain those components operating open at the very least. And then on the upper reservoir, the most eastern reservoir, we'll call it the lower reservoir, there is a booster station that runs water to the upper reservoir. So that's the third component that we would need to power to maintain the system flow for fire flow. So it's a bit tricky, and I can appreciate where you're coming from. There should be a solution where we can draw water from the lake to supply fire flow for you in those events, in perfect storm event where you would need it, absolutely. But you can see where it becomes a challenge between the lake pumps and then the reservoir. We would actually need to supply 3 points of power. But that's not saying that it can't be done. We just need to come up with a different plan.
Yep. We just like it considered and looked at and investigated and see what the total cost would be. Granted, maybe replacing the valves with a manual override, and so that eliminates that power station. Just anything, you must have electrical engineers at least look into it and see if it's possible, right? You can see our concerns.
Absolutely. And then another additional layer of complexity is interior health. So once you start putting untreated water into a distribution system and having overrides or bypasses, interior health gets quite sticky about these things.
Yeah.
So that would be another layer of complexity we would need to address. So yes, we could actually bypass the water treatment plant entirely and have a pipe running, that bypasses it just straight up to the reservoir. Would interior health like this? Probably not. You would have to have a physical disconnection, but it's not to say that it can't be done. It's just all these considerations need to be addressed before we move forward with a plan.
I think we need to, as Robin said, identify what the objective is.
Yeah.
The objective is only to maintain firefighting water pressure. Then that simplifies it dramatically. And it doesn't get into these health issues of putting water into reservoirs. If it is for complete keeping the water system running, like for homes, that's a different story, and that's much more expensive.
So there's, as Alex, sorry, go ahead, Cheryl. Oh, okay, I thought you had a comment. No, as Alex said, many things that we do at a treatment plant require construction permits. So IH has the right to say yes or no on it. Engineering involvement typically or other professional in some form in order to even put that before them. So as soon as we try to get water to the first reservoir, we need to get the override of the normal technology there with a fairly close piece, which then requires IH permit and then commenting it. I totally agree with you that we should make that point of saying what is the overriding emergency and safety. So if you have an interface fire, I totally agree. It's better to have non-potable water and fire supply than potable water for that period of time. Everybody can at home boil water. Power outage, maybe not, but
I think we need to be careful about exactly why we're doing this. And if it's, as in my case, I would think the firefighting aspect would be the most important. The rest of it is, as you say, and you could survive for weeks off the reservoirs for just domestic supply, restricted.
Yep.
It could incur dramatic cost increases for a project of that type. It's not just putting a receptacle on a pump station and then plugging in some commercially available 10 kilowatt generator. And so it's a point that would require, I think, a preliminary study of what we want to do or what we want to prepare for. In my view, we haven't had that level of catastrophic situation in this whole valley. We haven't had fires like in Los Angeles, you might say.
So being personally involved in the Spokane situation and whatever, to some degree, through the emergency services, we had very, very significant threats there and got out of it relatively unscathed. There were house losses but certainly some animal losses in the process. But so the risk is there. What's different, your area is relatively low vegetation, so you don't have the same situation as areas where you have mature trees and bush right to close to your house. I agree, that is different from what we see in a lot of other areas. So you have that going for yourself in that area, no doubt about it. Interface fires are still a significant threat. I would argue, if we look at the California situation, for example, they have as well a lot of areas where you think there's not enough vegetation to cause the threat that they have, but it still moves with significant winds. The transfer switch and a cable out from the transfer switch for a generator is, relatively speaking, cheap.
Yeah, I wouldn't even use a cable. I would just put a receptacle.
Receptacle, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's typically goes to the outside of the building so that you can plug it in and just put your generator on the side of the pump station building. The bigger question is what's required to override that at the treatment plant to get it at least to the first reservoir. I'm not even talking to the second reservoir.
But would you put untreated water into a treated reservoir?
You can.
You can, but would you?
If the threat is significant enough, yes.
Okay.
And all it requires is then proper flushing and cleaning of the reservoir to return to normal services afterwards. But again, we would not do that preemptive. The threat would have to be significant. We wouldn't do it just for a power outage. I don't think we probably would initially go and haul water before we do something like this. But again, let's look at that, what's required from a treatment plant perspective to override the treatment to supply into the first reservoir untreated water, and then we can go from there.
So the risk versus cost.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I would imagine, well, there's one of two ways that you could do it. I do want to speak first to the lake pumps, just so you have an idea of what a 15 horsepower, we do have three-phase power down there, but what a 15 horsepower pump generator would cost. And it's not VFD, so it doesn't have a variable frequency drive, so it doesn't come on at a nice slow pace. It's an on or off situation, which requires a much larger generator. We costed one out in one of our water systems after paying, and this isn't even a joke, I think it was $8,000 or $10,000 for a 3-day rental to power that well pump. So we costed it out and budgeted $70,000 for a generator for that size of pump, specifically a 15 horsepower. So it's significant. The rentals are also significant. So that's one item I wanted to address. The second one, with regard to the failed closed valves in the water treatment plant, we're primarily looking at the solenoid valves for the UV units. Those would be easily powered by UPS. So that's something that can be done. Again, it's really tricky when you're coming to the interior health portion of that. And we would have to have some fail safes in place. The other option would be actually a bypass, like a pipe bypass that goes right past the water treatment facility with two components that you can physically remove. Interior Health is very happy with that. We have that in other water systems, so we can do that. But the more important point of this is that the amount of power needed to pump from those lake pumps is significant. And something we can look into if the CAC would like us to spend a little bit of money on maybe a design brief to see what that would look like in terms of the requirements for the pump, how to bypass the water treatment facility and get water up to the one reservoir, because remember there's that second booster pump that would be required for the upper reservoir to be supplied. So that's something we can look at in a feasibility study. If the CAC
It won't be cheap, even a feasibility study. I mean, to get an electrical engineer to go through all that, it's going to be at least $25,000.
Yeah, unless you do the bypass, still needs, it's an in-ground spool piece more or less, so you have some kind of tank in the ground where you have a spool piece that you quickly can put in to bypass the facility. Still needs interior health permission, but it's not a huge design piece. But like you said, we have done, for example, in the Duhamel system, we have done it twice, that we put generators out there. We have the outlet there. We have it in South Spokane. I don't know that we used the generator there before, but we have a few systems that are ready, generator ready in a way. We had it in Ryandale, now replaced it with a permanent generator there. So we can look into that. We'll probably put a couple grand in here for an engineer to look at that from a permit side, if that's what you want. And just pull that from reserves if you want us to investigate the feasibility. Some of it we can do in-house, some of it we probably have to pull somebody in.
Transfer to Robin to come back.
Yeah, I just think it's worth the money to at least look into it. To just say no, it'll never happen. I don't like that at all. I don't know. Maybe speaking to the Balfour fire chief, get his opinion, see if it's actually necessary. But if it's a forest fire, they're going to need a lot of water up there, and if they're tankering up there, they're not going to be very effective at fighting fires. And my house, My house is right against the forest, so I am very close, and so are lots of other people up at Grandview, right next to the forest. So it is a consideration.
I mean, the fire departments meanwhile are set up with a dual tender system, right, that they can haul water fairly efficiently. You have with Belker a system that has a couple of high flow and actually certified hydrants. So you have at a decent proximity hydrants with good flow available. Quite frankly, in a high or interface fire situation, it is very likely that they would draw from the lake. So they have the ability to put up more or less plastic basins that they pump into, and then the tenders pump from there. That's typically the approach that's taken in interface fire situations. So in short, our fire departments are set up a lot better than they were, for example, 10, 15 years ago. For these types of situations, the readiness is a lot better. But we will look into it if there's agreement amongst the group that is a worthwhile exercise.
Yeah, I don't mind reasonable preliminary advisory inspection kind of report.
Okay. sounds good.
I can add that as a line item. I would, on a conservative estimate, probably budget 10,000 for it.
Let's talk about that outside.
Okay.
Think it a little bit through what we need. Might be a bit early to throw numbers around.
Scope
Now,
exactly what.
just to chime in too, I mean, you may want to look at some options, or I mean, together with this proposal, interface fuel management, there's other things beyond just water supply for firefighting that go with the risk management here.
One portion I throw out too, what we get often, so if we go to the solution, we can pump to the first, but not to the second reservoir. We very often get the discussion, we have now haves and have-nots within a system, and people want the same level of service. So that discussion often starts when we supply one portion of a system with a certain service and not the other. So just throw that out for consideration too.
Is it possible to connect directly into the fire hydrant pipes?
From the lake pump?
Yeah.
It's like feedback from the lake, basically pressurize the distribution system from down below so that it could feed the, that's a good question. I think there would be some issues with the PRV stations.
It's a long distance, it's a highway,
Yeah.
and then you have over 100 psi pressure down there, as I recall. Right, you're circumventing a pressure reducing valve
Yeah.
that's halfway down,
Yeah.
down the hill. So I think with hoses, you might be pushing it, but I don't know that for
Well,
sure.
not so much hoses, but just to be able to connect, however you get the water up to that first stage. That instead of sending it up to through the water treatment plant and up to the lower reservoir, to just connect directly in an emergency only into the fire water system.
There is the issue of the pressure reducing valves that they have a backflow prevention device in them. They flow one way, so you would be stopped.
Yeah, we would have to go above that, but just not all that far up, if I recall, right?
But there's 3 of them for each one of the pressure zones.
Yeah, but the lower one is, we'll look at that too. We'll get at that too.
That would prevent contamination of the reservoirs
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
only short term.
Maybe Interior Health doesn't mind if it's an emergency.
Yes.
As long as things are cleaned up and.
Sorry, as soon as you pump
Oh, yeah.
into past the first PRV, you have almost the whole system on boil water. If there's no workings around that, and I don't know that you can guarantee that it doesn't push up into the reservoir as
Yeah.
well. Right? And being below, I don't know how much that actually would help below the PRV, how much that would actually
It would just be.
provide us any that we might as well go to the lake.
Yeah. few residences below the first, that lower priority station.
We'll look at that as well and give it a thought and come back to you at our next meeting.
Yeah, I can see that it's a high importance in terms of time. It takes a year to decide this.
Yeah, won't be for this fire season, that's for sure.
And Heather, you'd said, you made a comment about IH and IHA, not having a problem with it. I mean, the issue with IH is the construction permit, which is what we flagged too. You know, they are pretty solely focused on drinking water systems. So we're starting to build in appurtenances and parts of their system that are dedicated to that and kind of go against what you would build for a drinking water system. That's when they start to push back and things like this become a bit more of an uphill battle.
And so from an insurance perspective, I believe you are not a certified system in regards to fire services. Your hydrants, I don't think, are certified through fire underwriters. So you don't get the insurance break from.
You do.
You do?
I do
We
believe
do.
it is.
We just,
This is certified system?
yeah, you do.
Okay, so
I
that's.
just want to know how far from the
That's-
house
Yeah.
this hydrant is.
Yeah, okay, so that's significant actually, considering that you don't have backup power, because that's typically very often a requirement from fire underwriters. So, okay, that plays into this then too. Okay,
So I'll just quickly read, sorry, Louis,
Yep.
you're partially right, but I'll just quickly read from, this is online on our website under the Duhamel Water System, or, sorry, what am I looking?
that's fine.
There's a dwelling protection grade.
Dwelling protection grade, let's see, this system has sufficient capacity to meet the requirement for rural firefighting demand. There are 7 hydrants on the system. The fire underwriter survey recognized the system as having dwelling protection grade. So that's,
Interesting, okay, so I believe when we got that was at the early stages. You have probably half of the houses you have now, so the reliance on the reservoir probably was higher than it can be now. So it's an interesting one. We probably should think about that a little bit too. Thanks.
I know the fire chief and his team do check out the fire hydrants in our community annually, maybe even more often.
Sorry, they shouldn't check out.
Heads up that they working on the hydrant.
They can exercise using the hydrants. The servicing of the hydrants is up to us. That's
Of course.
Yeah, it's our responsibility to ensure they are in working conditions.
Yeah, I've seen them come in and fill up one of their tankers off the fire hydrant, as essentially proving that it works fine.
Yeah, they should notify us when they do that, because it has sometimes impact on the operations. But yeah, okay.
the only other, I'll just throw this out there is, I have seen systems where they have a dedicated reservoir for fire flow.
Yeah.
So it's separate from domestic use. It's a completely different cell. And one that can be brought online in emergency. Of course, then you're dealing with, you need to chlorinate that intermittently to prevent stagnation and such. But that's another consideration.
This is an
capital cost, but
This is an interesting one, because thanks that you bring that up. If you don't have that same solution for the upper reservoir has 2 chambers and was designed for a lot more lots than are connected now. So that may actually be a consideration. Thanks for bringing that up. We should think about that too.
It's got 2 chambers.
Yeah. So very often larger reservoirs have 2 chambers, so that you can do maintenance to one side while you still provide water through it. So in fact, in the early days, when we had only one house or whatever connected up there, we only operated 1 chamber, because the water was needed to be rechlorinated all the time for barely any consumption. So
Okay, if there's then no other questions on that, Chris, I think I'll hand it back over to you.
good.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. The next item on the agenda is just a review of the board-approved financial plan, 2024 to 2028. Just to give you an idea of what we're working off of, and what we board-approved last year. And we'll, of course, compare it to what we presented in this draft budget. If you've got any questions about this, should we raise them?
So where are we looking on this?
It should be the adopted 2024
Under revenue.
the one pager.
It's page 3, it should be, or if you're looking at the agenda online, or it might be.
Sorry, Chris. I'm just, I hope I didn't miss something. I thought we were going to talk about the percentages of the projected increases.
Oh, we will.
Okay, we'll do that now. Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
This is
Okay.
just review of the already board-approved budget, then we're going to go
Okay.
to the draft budget.
All right.
And we'll go through that.
Thank you. I just have one question, just in terms of how did we end up in a negative in the prior year surplus? Or is that really a negative? Like, I see we're back to zero now in 2025, but in 2024?
So else?
Under,
It's the
under
smaller,
system information
it's
or
this,
under revenue?
it's the smaller page. Do you have the smaller page here? It's,
Yeah,
that's what Cheryl's.
It's a little easier to read this.
Under reserves.
It's.
So, pardon, I'm just going to share my screen.
So I don't know for sure, but what I do notice is that 2023 we had 15 grand in repairs and maintenance, so there may have been unforeseen repairs and maintenance in that year.
We did have a couple of, piping other repairs in the water treatment plant.
Sorry?
We had a couple of repairs in the water treatment plant. I had a repairs in the water treatment plant last year, 2023.
So unforeseen repairs.
Unforeseen repairs, yes.
But it's larger than that.
And then I think it's just the,
I wonder if the PRV upgrade came unforeseen.
no, that was a capital,
That was budgeted?
yeah, that was
Where,
budgeted.
where are we looking under what line item?
Sorry.
Oh, here, I've got it up on the screen here.
Can't see that.
Grandview.
Mine should be.
The prior year surplus is this line item.
So we have the previous year,
Yeah.
2023 actual deficit surplus is a deficit.
Oh, yeah, I see the deficit here.
And that's, I think, it shows that I think it has a deficit in.
Yeah, I just find it unusual that there would be a negative in a prior year surplus, because normally in the budgets that I see, the prior year surpluses are positives. So this, I just find this unusual.
Not necessarily. So keep in mind that our repair cost and contracted services are always based on an average of the previous years. So if you have an unusually high, unexpected repairs or maintenance, then that can trigger that you exceed your budget. And we are allowed to do so when we have emergency in quotation marks responses we have to do. So if you have a broken line or PRV failure or as we had a couple of years ago, you lose your screen and you lose your lake pumps and whatever, and we have to do unforeseen repairs that are of emergency nature. We proceed repairing that. We are not waiting for 2 months before the financial plan is amended to do so. And that can result then in deficits. Sometimes if it's big enough and warranted, we come back and do a financial plan amendment, but sometimes we are, for time reasons, not getting to that. And then we're addressing it in the following year as a withdrawal from reserves to make up for that deficit.
So the difference between the 2024 budget and the 2024 estimate, estimated year end, was only about $1,000. Well, one was a negative of 15,692, and the other was 16,820.
Correct. It was actually projected. You're absolutely correct.
Right, so it's not a large amount.
No, and like I said, because it was a projected one, my guess is
Uli, could it be that this came from originally 2023 or prior to that, and then it just kind of kept growing by a little bit in the next couple of years? Could that be what happened here in this prior year surplus deficit? And for some reason, it is? Okay. And then for some reason, it just didn't get pulled from reserves.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
We should have properly done. We should have identified the reasons for it and make a transfer from reserves to the budget to offset. Yep. As you correctly pointed out, we had in 2023 a $15,675 deficit. That's where we normally should have, and I'm not sure, memory fails, why we didn't balance that out with a withdrawal from reserves. So you're absolutely correct. So we were dragging that on for a couple of years instead of eliminating it with a withdrawal from reserves. I don't know if it had anything to do that for some reason wasn't of capital nature. We have sometimes discussion with our finance department when and what we can withdraw from reserves, but in most cases we can do so.
So 2025 has dropped $10,000 now. What's the reason for that?
The deficit?
Yeah.
So I think part of the whole story is when you look at 2024, we did a significant increase to your rates of 15%.
Yes.
On the user fee, not the taxation, but on the user fee, because we recognized that your reserves are a little bit at threat because we had no contributions to reserve to speak of, well below the projected ones. So we recognized that we need to do better in regards to reserve contributions. Chris will later on speak to our asset management planning piece and where we are in comparison to that. But I think that's the driver that we had and made up some of that deficit through that increased rates. And now we have somewhat stabilized rates with the proposed increases going forward. But again, I'm working off memory.
Is it possible when you reconcile your budgeted or forecast versus actual year end, and there are movements of $10,000 or more to balance it out or to take it from some other account? Is it possible to give us, even just the Water Advisory Committee, very short bullet point heads up that this is what's gone on?
I presume it was.
Because we don't have much contact during the year.
Yes, pretty well just in the budget time. So you mean something during the year? Some information?
When it happens.
Okay, yeah. So when we have unforeseen expenses, that's what you mean, that we give a heads up and saying this will impact your budget going forward?
Something like that, yeah.
We can do that, sure.
It doesn't have to be a big explanation or anything like that.
No.
Just a bullet point.
That's a fair,
This
fair
is what
comment.
is foreseen.
Yeah. So as a note, when we have unforeseen repairs exceeding and the budgeted repairs budget significantly, not if it's $500, but if it's significantly exceeding the budgeted repairs or contracted services budget, that's typically the two line items that we send out an email with a brief explanation to the members of the committee. Okay.
That would be better because we don't want to sort of have to discover that at the annual meeting.
Yeah, no, that's a fair comment, absolutely.
Uli, I have one question here just on, and it kind of goes back to the other page, but it's on the reserves and it's on the interest on reserves, because on the interest on reserves on the other page, it's saying 1%. Like that couldn't be accurate, 1% interest on reserves.
No, and it isn't. If you look at that smaller sheet that has the budget there, the adopted financial plan 24 to 28 sheet. If you look on the upper part where you have your revenues, there's a line that says investment income and interest. And it is $2,491 for 2023. It might have come a little bit down since then because the interest rates have weakened a little bit since then. But so you're right, the interest amount would be definitely higher than what you're seeing here in the budget. We have a similar balance in our reserve than in 2023, where it was $77,000. We are now between 75 and 79. So, no. Now I'm a bit confused because it says on the bottom $1,700 and the bucket says 2,491. But it should be in that range. You should be definitely have well over $1,000 interest. The comment about 1% is a remnant from before the interest started to hike, and that was on average roughly what we saw, and that has changed with the relatively steep increase in interest rates. But we provide you with an actual, can you make a note, Chris, that we provide an actual to the group of the interest income? Generally speaking, interests are relatively low. We are not, obviously not investing these funds in any kind of higher risk investment tools. We are held through regulation to very conservative and safe investments for these things, but my guess would have been in the 3% range at that time.
Yeah, I made a note and I can follow up.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Any other questions on the adopted financial plan? If not, then we'll go to the draft plan. There's a typo here that should read 2025 to 2029 financial plan. And then your year columns line up with that. So this is our draft financial plan moving forward. Uli had mentioned, of course, the 15% increase in fees for 2024 to make up for inadequate reserves. Moving forward, our projection is a much lower increase moving forward with a 6% increase in 2025, followed by a 5%, a 4%, and 3%, which is 2029.
This 2024 was a follow-on from the last 3 years at the same levels. Right, okay.
Moving down, parcel taxes, the other portion of our revenue. You'll see that they are staying flat for 2025, 6, 7 at 0%, with increases projected for 2028 and 2029.
Chris, can I interrupt for
Yeah.
1 second? Returning back to interest, so the I don't know if it's the final statement, but as close as we got it at the time, end of 2023, the interest earned on your reserves was 2,491.37. So the upper line is correct, the lower one with the reserve balances is incorrect. So $2,491 revenue, interest earned on $77,000, that would be clearly over 3%.
We'll move down to,
You're getting ahead of me. The parcel tax percent increase, I noticed that in 2028 and 29, it suddenly goes up to 5%. Is that legislated?
yeah, that would be legislated. I'd have to review your requisition limit, but I think we're still within it. And you'll recall that that parcel tax component of the revenue is generally intended to build up your reserve contribution over time. We move down to the operating expenses, which are of course the bulk here. We've applied a 1% increase for salaries in 2025, and then assumed the 2.7% inflationary increase for 2026, followed by 2% moving out. Again, those are projections. 1% is a real number for us.
So it's basically following the cost of living increases or something like that.
Yeah, the 1% was a review, internal HR review, and that's what we landed on for a cost of living increase.
It's actually well below quite the inflationary rate. The inflationary rate was, I believe, 3.3 or something like that.
Right.
But the general review, organizational review, comparing to other organizations in the wage ranges, netted in an overall 1% increase.
As far as salaries go, Alex has discussed a few items in this section as well, the repairs and maintenance. The contracted services here includes invasive plant management from CKIS year over year. Those are again real numbers from recent quotes. That capital expense. We had mentioned inadequate contribution for reserve in previous years. What we're trying to do with this budget moving forward is build up those reserves. And I can talk to your 25-year and 100-year contribution requirements based on our asset management plan, which are below. But yeah, again, through this 5-year budget, we look to build up our reserves to required levels for system maintenance.
So these contributions on the operating expenses, they come from the RDCK other water systems, and this is our portion.
No, this is your contribution to reserves from your system.
Oh,
There are transfers to other services. So these are internal transfers from the Grandview utility to cover things like building operating costs, feed costs, shared services within the regional district. So all the systems contribute to that to these line items to varying degrees depending on their size and complexity.
So essentially, that's a big portion of your user fees are these operating costs. That's if you
So you've got also invasive plant management.
Correct. We have invasive plant management. We compete invasive plant management on, I believe, 4 systems.
I think most of
What does that entail?
So the Central Kootenai Invasive Species Society, CKIS, provides that service for, across the Kootenai region, address things like, Japanese knotweed management, any other kind of invasive species that could pose a danger or a threat to your infrastructure, and should be managed rather than, addressed once it becomes out of control.
So this is around the facilities.
This would be around the facility. Yeah.
Okay. We've got a serious broom infestation in Grandview.
You? Okay, I'll make a note of that.
And all along the Grandview Drive.
Yeah.
And now it's going in the Bell Trail.
Yeah.
It's right up to the trees.
So that's a tricky one, right? So CKIS might do something for highways. I don't know what the contractual agreement between them is. And they are contracted by us for RDCK properties throughout the region.
Grandview Drive is under RDCK.
Grandview Drive, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's part of your strata.
It is, but the road is maintained up to the cul-de-sac at the end by RDCK. By snow management and vegetation incurrence along the side.
No, the only thing we maintain, you mean in regards to snow plowing, for example?
Yeah, this is the general RDCK.
Yeah, we only provide snow plowing to our facilities, from the road to our facilities.
Yeah, in terms of the water.
Yes.
Yeah.
But road maintenance, the RDCK does no road maintenance. That's either highways or it's your strata providing it.
It's not the strata. The strata boundaries for snow removal start at the Grandview Drive. And it's all the rest of it. And that's privately contracted. I think Brand Gray. So, but not Grandview Drive.
Yeah, he should be only doing to the treatment plant, from the road to the treatment plant, maybe down to the pump station. I'm not sure if that's part of it. Maybe to the upper reservoir, I don't know. To the lower reservoir. That's what we contract through your user fees, Brand Gray, to do the snow removal.
Yeah, related to the water system.
Correct, but not the paved roads.
The paved roads are also done by him through the stratas.
Through the strata. Okay, yes, now we are on the same page. Yeah, not the RDCK.
The only thing I have, because I live on Grandview Drive, is the RDCK or its agent is responsible for that Grandview Drive itself. And Gray doesn't touch it. He stops right at the edge. And,
Roads are not managed by the regional district. The regional district does not manage roads in the area of Area E. All of the roads are managed by the province unless they're managed by their own stratas. And there are classes of roads where, they don't get plowed, but we don't do it.
Oh, yeah.
No, yeah, that's it. Well, this has been a puzzle for me because after a big snowfall, there is I don't know who they are, whether it's a YRB or we just assumed it had to be the only other people that we know, and that's the RDCK.
So I just say there's YRB or their contract. They may have a contract that they have to do it.
Yeah,
it's not.
There's also the vegetation is overgrowing onto the road.
Yeah,
and I've had my aerial hit a couple of times by trees.
So, and after the meeting, why don't we sit down, look at a map, and just show me on the map, and we can follow up.
I mean, the lower part of the water system is not within the strata.
No, it's down the lake
Yeah, not only down the lake, as the first part up
of the hill.
the hill is as well not in the strata and would be part of the responsibility of MOTI or their contractor, YRV. So everything else, if they do it by mistake, fair, but it wouldn't be contracted by us or MOTI necessarily. So that is either contracted by you or they do it by you as a strata.
We can talk about this.
Yes.
Aside from it, because it's been annoying to quite a number of people.
Just the room and.
By getting the willow trees and the birch trees and so forth now have grown big enough that they're incurring right onto above the pavement.
That may have to be a strata discussion, but let's talk after the
But
meeting.
it's not in strata. None of Grandview Drive is in strata.
We were told that road was.
Well, I'll bring up, I'll bring up the parcel map.
Yeah, that would be best. Okay.
And then, put that question to bed.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, like I said, the transfer to other services, again, pretty much covers keeping on the lights and either the office space, and that's your portion as a system to those needs. Spoke about reserves and reserve contributions. You'll see from that 2025 to 2029 period, the general buildup of reserves, again, with some capital outlays that are drawn from reserves, but again, building up to a good level of reserve, making some improvement over the past. At the bottom, you'll see two numbers. You'll see 25-year number and,
Bottom,
I'm not. Share my
way down.
screen again.
Thought we were walking down.
At the bottom of this, you'll see two numbers. They are taken from the asset management plan for Grandview, and they are calculated needs based on the infrastructure that you own, it's a system, and its age and its requirements, pre-programmed requirements for renewal and replacement. Over two different time periods is what we typically look at. We typically look at a shorter term 25-year need, what you need in reserves annually to maintain that system, and then a longer term projection of 100 years for what you need annually to put into your reserves.
So you got this listed under 2021 and nothing else after that?
No, it's not intended to be under the 2021 column. It's intended to speak to the 25-year and 100 years. So it's not.
Oh, that's just an isolated item.
Yes, sort of. Yeah.
Could we go back a bit and just explain what the 59550, the environmental service fee, that's quite substantial. What exactly is that all for?
Yeah, I can speak to that. And in fact, that is the one that we haven't calculated yet. And I did some work last night on it, and that will actually increase in comparison to this number. What it is the management of your systems. We have 18, 19 systems. One is separately calculated, but 17 of these systems are managed through staff. You see 3 of them here. We have administrative support, all our associated costs from computer to office space to telephones to vehicles that we use, and that is included in that service. And we have all associated costs for the administration of these systems, some of the reporting requirements, the some of the preparation of the bills is happening on this side, not on the finance side. All of that is encompassed in this one item in regards to administration of these systems.
So the salaries, are for people that are going out and checking.
Correct. So we have actually two
And
salaries.
this is
Sorry, go ahead.
the administrative costs.
Yeah, so there's actually two salary related items that you have. When they are in the field, our operators in the field, then you see it under salaries and associated 2 lines down, benefits. That's the cost when they are in the field. When an operator is in the office and works, let's say, on data for annual reporting, when they are on vacation, when they are sick, when they are on a statutory holiday that they are entitled to, all of that cost goes into an operator admin, what we call an operator admin line item, and is charged back to you under what you have on the transfer to other services, under 59,500 on the just above the reserves. There is a line item that says Grandview Water Utility Transfer to Other Service, Operator Admin. So these 6,000, a little bit over $6,000 that you see, that's what the operator cost is of not in field time. So that's when they spend it on the desk, or if they are on vacation, sick leave, statutory holiday pay, or any associated pays like that. So that's $6,000 plus the top salary line item, 18,000. Not 18, sorry, 16,000 to 1,500. Below that, for capital project support and the benefits, that's all operator cost. The $20,000 below, and likely going to be more than that, is the administrative side for your water system specific. So that's
So
a small portion, or a portion of my wage is Alex's and Chris's wage. Sorry, and then Chris's staff. Chris has 1.8 full-time equivalent staff that is paid through this as well.
That's the IT fee component.
No, IT is the computer department separate, and the finance department and other administrative stuff like human resources, whatever you see in the general admin fee under non-operating expenses. So let's go through that again. Non-operating expenses category. You have your contribution to reserve. You have transfer to other services, which is below detailed out, which includes contributions to fleet and that operator admin that we just spoke about. Below that, you have general admin. So that is starting from the CAO down to human resources, finance department, and things like that. That is that cost. Then you have below the transfer to other service, the IT fee. So that's our computer department that largely deals with our SCADA systems and computers on site, and some of our communications things. And then you have the environmental services fee, which is us plus our supporting staff.
Yeah. So when you put all that together, it's about 85 grand right now, like for the last year.
The total system cost, is that what is?
Yeah, like if we look at what, RDCK is needing to run the water system, and you're $6,800 short from the income that you receive. Is that right?
63.
I'm just rounding.
Yeah, 63 I see as the RDCK direct Oh, sorry, no, that's the other ones. Yeah, 63, that's what I roughly see. Between the salaries and benefits up top. Maybe a bit more, 65. Maybe.
Well, just from me reading it anyway, it looks like non-operating expenses
Yeah, which is 42
Yep.
rounded.
and the operating. About 85 together.
Sorry, the non-operating is 42 and then which one? Which
The
line?
operating expenses are 66.
Oh, no, that, if you take all operating expenses, then you're over $100,000. You're at 107-ish, 108-ish. Because you have 66,000 projected for 2025 as sorry. Some of that is, you're right, some of that is capital cost. Yeah, yeah, you're correct, I'm wrong. Yeah.
Okay.
It's only the salaries and benefits, employee health and safety component really. Plus there's some memberships, dues and subscriptions, office supplies, and admin. So all of that's smaller scale numbers, but
That's sweet.
you've got
All
your
those
repairs
little
and maintenance.
numbers. Yeah, I was just looking for the 2024 estimated year end, just to get an idea.
Actually, one change, Chris, on this director's allowance is going to the overhead now, right? So
Yes.
we have to roll that out and incorporate it into the overhead. So part of it is obviously too, and that varies largely from year to year, but initiatives that we just discussed in regards to alternatives for backup power and things like that, that's where somebody like Alex would spend time on. A supervisor would spend time in the office, which then would come through operate admin. So these are some of the items. We have frequent discussions with Interior Health on a permitting piece. We have reporting requirements. Every water system, depending on size, has either monthly or annual reports to submit. We have the water quality testing and the review of that data. So that's all part of what somebody like Alex or Chris would and their staff would do. Part of it is as well that we obviously, similarly as you here have questions, justified questions that you need answered. We have as well a water services committee where we have all rural directors with the exception of one and one municipal director sitting on. Every 2 months we have a meeting like that where we try to inform the directors generally about issues or programs that we do, what our larger strategic projects are. Sometimes we have projects. Chris is dealing with one right now in regards to a larger Crescent Valley water supply study that we are conducting because significant threats and problems with their groundwater supplied water in that region. Alex and her group or Chris's group will deal with grant applications, for example, which we attempt every year on some form when there's available grants, and we try to write these grant applications, things like that.
For instance, like the idea of getting some backup for an extensive fire. Maybe there are grants available that we might be able to access. Should we go forward with, that?
For a project like that, it would be difficult to secure senior government grants, meaning provincial or federal grants, would be difficult. Maybe a discussion with the director if there's anything available from her side, but the large applications are really focused on large projects. Problem is we write maybe one, maximum two applications a year for 18 systems. So in order to have anything coming around significantly, your queue is every 10 to 20 years for a senior government grant, and that's typically then reserved for large capital projects. We have done, I believe, 3 in total now, grant applications for linear infrastructure replacement, meaning pipes in the ground. Have not been successful with one, but it's an immediate threat to many of the somewhat older systems, particularly the ones that have asbestos pipe. So some of these systems are now in the well over $2,000, approaching in the next 5-year horizon almost $3,000 a year rates because of the cost of replacing systems. Some systems have 100% asbestos pipe, so for them that's a significant cost item that we are working on. Because of liability reduction, we have as well introduced a policy in regards to removing where feasible, cost feasible, and technically feasible, removing asbestos pipe where other pipes we often leave in the ground, but asbestos pipe we try to remove at the same time. Because of the future liability.
Is there not an urgency to this?
Yeah.
There is an urgency. Yes.
Yes.
We have been able to push some of it out. We talked 5 years ago already about a 10-year time frame. We're still talking about a 10-year time frame because some of the pipe, luckily, is in better shape than generally literature tells us, but we feel a maximum of a 10-year time frame to replace all of them. Some of them haven't even started the process. So we have some systems that are in significant financial trouble.
I'm really bored by this because I've been involved with some other countries with asbestos problems.
Yeah.
And specifically Australia. And they just brought the hammer down and said it's all got to go.
So on the
they did it.
On the surface, it's probably, like asbestos containing roofs or sidings and whatever. That's probably to some degree underway. We are trying to lobby and raise understanding on the utilities side in regards to saying the provinces and federal sides need to shift focus from general infrastructure to bring this on their radar because it is an imminent threat. And I think there's even still large municipalities that underestimate that. An example I saw from a report, CBC report, where a senior manager from one of the 2 large Saskatchewan cities proudly talked about their achievement to replace 1% of their asbestos lines per year. And so obviously somebody hasn't understood the context of these lines not only another 100 years exactly. So like I said, there's a lack of understanding and urgency both on federal and in some cases and provincial and some
They have
cases.
no idea of the litigation risk they're sitting on.
That's
no idea.
And we had the discussion with our directors, and our directors have recognized the problem and approved a policy that makes us, with the exception of lines where they are on the paved road, for example, highway, that's one of the exceptions where we do not take it out of the ground because that
But you could put in PVC liner in it.
Yes, but the problem is on the outside too, right? And what we have identified as a future threat is right now, the asbestos from asbestos lines is what we call a non-friable asbestos. So it's relatively easy to remove, relatively easy. Still a significant cost. But in another 10, 20, 30 years, this becomes a friable one. And now how do you contain it when you ever take it out? You can do the lining as you spoke about it, but it doesn't eliminate the problem that it deteriorates on the outside. And we all know on our highways we have fairly narrow corridors we can work in. So if we put a line in here, replace it over here, next time we have to go back where that asbestos line is because there's not enough room to do it anywhere else.
Special permits.
So we just shift it to the next generation if we don't remove it.
Bad legacy left.
Yeah, it is. It's unfortunate that it was so widely
Sorry, Cheryl had her hand up. Cheryl, please.
Yeah, thank you, Uli. Can I just confirm, like, this service has no asbestos pipe, correct?
This system does not. It is
Thank you.
past the period that asbestos was used. So we do not, other than having glued joints, we have quite satisfactory type of pipes in place.
So-
Take the spreadsheet off.
I did.
Yeah, so just for the committee's information, the other service that we have in Area E, the Balfour water system, we've got about 1.7 kilometers of this stuff, of this asbestos pipe. So I just wanted to make you aware. Okay.
I think we moved that number down.
Down?
Yeah, I think we did. That was the number that I popped open, but the asset management sheet hadn't been updated with about 700 meters of removal, I believe. That was in
Yeah, Balfour Wharf Road.
Balfour
Yeah.
Wharf
So there's
Road. So-
1 kilometer left.
Yeah, there's about a kilometer left. So a better news story. So, but still, yeah.
Overall, as a regional district, I believe we have about 37 kilometers of asbestos pipe still to be removed. So the problem is substantial.
Yeah, what's the plan? The time frame?
We are doing what we financially can right now. So we have about 2 projects per year of replacing sections. We are still slower than our targeted 10-year horizon, but financially it's just not quite, we're just not quite able to meet that 10-year pace. Part of it is too that we need to find time, again, tasks that we have as on the administrative level, to go to the communities, have community meetings, have that discussion to raise the understanding. We are not just here because we are greedy and want to increase your rates. There's an actual problem that we are unable to address other than by raising rates significantly and continue to do so. So that communication piece we are still working on in order to hopefully accelerate the replacement schedule for some of these systems. And from time to time, we try to assess the condition of the pipes that we remove and see if we can buy ourselves a few more years in regards to the use of these pipes. But generally speaking, it's a bit of a back to the wall situation for some of the systems.
Has anyone raised the awareness of this in the community? I mean, I would think the community would back the removal. I mean, it's a cancer-causing agent.
Yes.
Well known.
Yes. As an airborne product, no doubt, that is totally established.
There's less evidence in drinking water. The studies are ongoing as far as risk, understanding the true risk with drinking water derived asbestos from asbestos concrete pipe.
And
W5 did a good expose on that.
Yeah.
It would be a good place to start.
The EPA is probably the lead on that type of research. I know Health Canada is looking into it as well. It's still, being investigated. What we know, I guess, from a infrastructure perspective, is the sooner that you can get these out of the ground, the better. It's a danger when you go in to do any kind of repair on them.
I think Canadian federal level, the communication is still, your drinking water is safe in regards to asbestos line. And like I said, there's, as Chris pointed out, there's only 2-3 studies that should suggest differently, but with the amount of studies out there that say otherwise, the clear evidence is still out there. And for us, it is, at this point, the replacement schedule is less about the safety concern. I think we are still relatively comfortable with these lines in regards to health and safety, but it is losing the lines and losing overall supply because the lines deteriorate to a point that we just can't maintain water supply. I.e. Calgary, which wasn't asbestos line, was a different issue, they had pre-stressed concrete pipe there, but we have seen what happened in Calgary, and that is certainly not a situation that we want to be in with 2-3 systems at the same time because we miss replacing the asbestos time in a timely fashion. It is the problem too, once they deteriorate and you have a leak, you try to put a repair clamp on and there's no integrity there. You just squish it, and so you run till you find some stretch of pipe that actually where you can get a clamp on. And that's the risk, that's the point where we don't want to get to by being proactively replacing these pipes.
Well, I guess it doesn't apply to us, but it's interesting to understand it.
Yes. Yeah, that's a problem Alex deals significantly with as part of our capital plan. Like I said, typically right now we have about 2, hopefully we can accelerate that pace, but 2 sections of pipes, that's not whole systems, that's always just sections, but hoping to accelerate that in the future.
More questions on the draft budget?
Just one point. Will this be posted on the website?
This is presented to you. It's a draft budget.
Okay. What ends up on the website?
Pardon me?
What ends up on the website?
The approved budget, the board approved.
If I've got to send a note to everybody in the community.
Yeah.
That this information is available to them on the public website. The question I had was, what is actually there? It's not the draft.
It's not the draft budget. What gets posted to the website and the financial services website for the RD is the board approved budgets.
Okay.
So the whole purpose of the CAC is, of course, to present you draft information for your review and for us to modify and massage as needed based on that. So
what is on the website as well are the board agendas. Sometimes, I don't know, Shell, I think the intent largely was in January to get some draft budgets to the directors. I'm not sure that we are there on the water side yet. The directors will deal with budgets in February in a dedicated meeting. At that point, the drafts should be at a point where they are getting close, but subject to comments from directors and changes triggered based on these comments. And then the final approval process is about mid-March, targeted for mid-March.
The draft budgets will be posted to the regional district website when they're in draft, and there will be a public meeting held. And for Area E, our public meeting is held along with Area F and the City of Nelson. And that's a public meeting where everybody can come, and all of the service budgets for every service that we are paying into will be there. And then we'll have our public meeting. And after the public meeting, and that happens between February and March, I believe. Do the budgets get approved in March, Uli, right?
Yes, has to be adopted legally before the end of March.
Okay, right. So between our meeting and our budget meeting in February, the special meeting that Uli was talking about, there will be a public meeting, and I don't have the date for that yet, but it would be between the end of February and the middle of March. And I always put that out in my newsletter, and there's also, it's out in the papers, and, it's fairly widely advertised for the public meeting. And in between then, if anybody has any comments from this committee, then they can send them to Chris. Correct, Chris?
Yep, correct.
Okay,
That's perfect.
okay.
Correct, my email, same night, of course, the meeting invite.
Yeah, and if you want to copy me on that, that would be great. So, I mean, after you leave this meeting and you're thinking about something, you're looking over your budgets, like, please feel free to email Chris and copy me, because we are now moving into the phases that we will be going through all of the budgets for Area E, every service, and then to that public meeting, which will happen after February.
And in regards to that public meeting, if you have somebody with significant concerns about budgets, direct them towards that public meeting. The regional district, not me personally, but the regional district goes through great effort to try to be in every rural area, to be there in person to talk about it. Very typically, they are not very well visited, so people don't take up on this, even that we know that there's a lot of people out there with significant concerns. So I would really direct people towards that meeting to have that in-person discussion about the budgets, express their concerns where they have some. They cannot always explain every detail, because obviously there's some on the different departments, but they will pass it on and get back to the person that has these concerns. But if you have somebody who is really frustrated about budgets, cost, and I totally get it, we certainly have some people on fixed income and otherwise that are struggling to make ends meet. So please direct them to these meetings. That's a good time, and that's what it is meant to do, to talk to the community about their concerns, but it's not very well adopted by people with concerns to actually go to these meetings.
Where are the meetings held normally?
Do you know, Cheryl, where the last one was?
Yeah, the Area E, F, and City of Nelson meetings are held in the room you're sitting in the boardroom, and it was actually pretty full last year when we had our meeting. We had some really good attendance, and that was great, because the very first year when I was elected, we had our public meeting very quickly. You get elected in the fall and then you go right into budgets, and not a single person came to that meeting. And I really found that was, it was really defeating, because we put so much work into these things and we want the public to have input, and nobody showed up. So then the next year, when we had we had lots of the city councilors from Nelson, and we had lots of people from the public. I thought that was great. And if you can't come in person, you can come on Zoom. So I'm just saying that if you're interested in these budget meetings, we would welcome your participation.
Maybe it was not publicized in the general press or something?
Yeah, there's requirements. It was in the paper. I think one of the challenges is the meeting time, and they typically have it in an evening, like a 7 p.m. start. And I think for, people from Balfour and the further outlying areas, especially that time of year, it can be a little challenging to drive into town for that. So I think that was maybe part of it. But I think it was just interest. I think just the public interest was a little bit less. And I think now that we're all living through this affordability crisis, we're all paying a little bit more attention to things like our property taxes and the increases. I believe that the public participation last year actually created a reduced overall budget, because our first iteration for Area E started at 13.2%. And when we passed the final budget at the end, it was 5.9%. So the pressure from the public on the politicians and the pressure from the public on the staff to keep our taxes low, and that people are watching and taking an interest, I think it's important. So That's all I would say, and why I think you should, take an interest. I'm one person, I'm representing almost 4,000 people, and I'm doing my best, but when I have some support from the community that's also taking an interest, that actually helps.
That's right, right? We all have to take a part if we want to see things go the way we want them to. So personally, I came to this meeting because I know I touch a million people, but I've just moved into Grandview, and I was floored by the fact that there were 2 tiers of payment for water. And I realized that's the way the developers set up the water system prior to RDC taking it over. But I would like, one of the benefits of having an agency like RDCK is that, I think things should be equitable among communities. And I think that we do, in the little bit that I've been able to gather so far, that we do pay pretty high rates with that second tier of water. So, that was my impetus in coming here and getting involved. But it's been really interesting to hear kind of how everything is broken down. I've always lived on property that had a well and never really thought about anything more than getting our water tested, once a year, make sure it's safe. So, yeah.
Can I ask you, you made a comment about 2-tier, two different pricing.
Second block, if we look at the
first block.
consumption.
Oh, sorry, the consumption threshold.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a common structure, for water, for metered water rates. It's generally intended, to encourage conservation.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that first block you get at, I'm looking at $1.54 per cube. And then, that second block is of course quite a bit higher at $3.85 budgeted for 2025. Again, that's to encourage conservation of the system. Grandview, I think, has historically had a very high per capita water use. Some of that can be attributed to, new development and irrigation as people bring lawns and gardens online when they move in. But, from a utility provider perspective, we want to see that come down and have some reasonable rates. So incentivizing that within, or either leveraging a rate structure that incentivizes conservation is what we thought was a very good fit for Grandview.
And that's quite practical reasons too, because the peak demand is actually can be fairly costly to a system, meaning, you run all year round at 10% of capacity or 15 or 20% of capacity, and then in the summer you ramp up near 100%. That means the design of the system, reservoir size, pumps, treatment capacity, is all laid out for that peak in July, August.
Sure.
If you can bring that peak down, it can, the system is in place now, but it can reduce the cost overall, particularly when we look now, in this case, at backup power and look at fire supplies, right? The higher your peak demand is, because the fire component in your reservoirs is on top of your peak demand. So that's how we have to size it. The higher that peak is, the bigger the overall water that we need to maintain in these reservoirs is. So there is a cost to having these peaks, and I don't know it for all of the systems, but before we started metering, for example, in Balfour, the peak demand was about 5 times the base demand. So, and there we struggled both with lake pumps, raw water lines, treatment capacity, reservoir size, everything. So the peak demands really hurt the system at the time. When we implemented metering, we were able to bring that peak demand substantially down. I want to say 40%, 30%, 30% of the peak demands. That allowed us to free up water for additional development. Before we were restricted, we barely could supply the base demands, the peak demands for the existing ones. So now we could bring on additional customers, which contributed to the overall cost of the system, which allowed us to stabilize to some degree the rate structures there. So
I hear you.
but we are,
For me, I don't want to water a lawn.
Yeah.
I want to grow a big garden
Yeah.
because I'm into food
And
sustainability.
quite,
But nobody cares that I'm watering the garden versus the lawn.
Yeah.
I still have to pay for it. And I think that when we think about the overall environmental impact, people growing their own food, that's a little different than watering your lawn. I think.
so we are open, not in this.
I know. I don't mind that. I just
You're
mind,
open, not in this meeting, but in the future. If you want to review the rate structure or the metered rate structure, we are open to have that discussion. So rate structures in Balfour are different than they are in your community. We can talk, is that second block at the right level? Or is the premium you pay once you get into that second level too high or too low? We are happy to have that discussion with you as a community. And that's what you in this committee are, you tell us if you feel we are not meeting the mark. That doesn't change the dollar amount that needs to be collected. So as you
I know.
reduce your peak amount, you have to bring your base amount up.
Yeah.
But I think with our metered rates are actually, does anybody know offhand what our metered revenue versus the base amount is?
I thought I looked at that.
I think it's
Under consumption service charges, second block.
Yeah. So $1.54 and three.
yeah, but as total revenue. Because I seem to remember in Grandview that 3/4 was actually collected on base amount and the rest came from metered consumption, but I could be.
That would make
Yeah.
sense. I mean, that's.
Most people have, you were saying there aren't, there isn't that much to catch fire there. That's because people have gravel in their yard,
And also,
When that
Heather, just to speak to your,
That hit everybody within ground sprinkler systems.
Yeah,
And they basically stopped using it.
yeah.
Yeah, you have to see too, some of these had leakages in the irrigation system. So we had one system and there was no ill intent, but we had one system that used at that time over 40% of the overall water usage in one irrigation system because they had a broken pipe they didn't know about.
Yeah.
So that's where metering coming in helped us to understand where water is going, right?
and Heather, to follow up too, you know that the bylaw, if you've got a garden and you water it with a handheld hose, you can water it at any time, regardless of.
I know.
Yeah, okay.
I do.
Yeah, okay.
But doesn't that still go against your base rate?
It does,
Yeah,
it does. I'm just
It
saying
does.
that you're allowed to, through.
We even had an excavator come in because we had a spring on the property in the winter when we were building.
Yeah.
Dug a great big pit, lined it with,
Oh, great.
yeah, it was great, except
Showcase.
that when summer came, May or April,
Yeah.
somewhere in there, the spring
Yeah.
stopped. Yeah. So,
Yeah, we
it
have-
almost worked, but.
We have had as well customers that had a pond and a flow through from the potable water system. Right?
I know, which is a waste, right? Yeah, I know. Yeah, anyway, it was good. Are we done?
If
Yeah, if
there's
there's any other questions, if not, then
We're covered all the
Done.
topics on the list here.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you, community members, thanks, staff. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good meeting.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye.